welcome to the Briefing Room. I'm Bill Froehlich from WTCM Radio News. It's our weekly roundup of some of the stories that are making headlines here in northern Michigan with the journalists that are covering those stories. And at the table this week with me, Jeremy McBain from the Petoskey News Review. Welcome back.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks for making the trip.
Always a pleasure.
Hey, I wanted to start off with some big news from the Supreme Court this week in relation to the Bay Mills Indian Casino.
Yes.
And the decision that their little casino that they opened in Vanderbilt outside of Gaylord can be there. Pretty significant development.
Well, yes, it is a significant development, but there's some interesting side notes to it. One is that the tribe is more looking to another decision that's going to be made by, I believe it's the Bureau of Indian Affairs, before they really open anything. And the second part of that is, I found this quite interesting, that the AG, Bill Schuette, is declaring victory in a way with this ruling. He found some comments that were made by Justice Kagan that said that while the state of Michigan cannot stop this casino, the state could bring charges or lawsuits against individual members of the tribe or employees of the casino for violation of Michigan's gaming laws, not having like licensing or just gambling on the premises.
Whatever they can think of.
It's interesting to me that he would mention that, and I mean it's a blatant threat, really.
Right.
It
leaves the door open to much more.
Yeah.
Essentially the ruling from the court said that any tribe can buy any land and it becomes sovereign land, right?
Yes.
I mean that just sent up a flag for me, saying, "Wow, are we opening the door to what? You can buy anything, anywhere. You can buy a house down the street, and all of a sudden the house is on sovereign land."
Well, it's still, you still have to have a decision from the Bureau of Indian Affairs on it too. But then again, like I said, there's still this statement made by Kagan, which seems to open the door to individual charges or lawsuits being brought against people who, I mean, even if you're an employee of an Indian casino, of the Bay Mill Casino, it seems that what Schuette is saying is that he could bring charges against you, which is a real interesting development, I think.
Gosh, it almost seems like once you get to this point, enough is enough. It's time to know when to fold them.
Well, it is an election year, though, Bill. and Schuette is a politician when it comes down to it. He's the AG, but hard to matter. He's a politician. It's election season, so one wonders if this isn't a part of the grand scheme.
You and I have been around long enough to remember when that opened and then closed immediately and reopened. I mean, what's been the status the last couple of years? Because I've lost track. And this was also a pretty small operation. This was about the big as this room. Not that you folks can see it at home, but just a couple of rooms, it was like a small house.
I believe it was just sitting there, just waiting, waiting for the decision. Not much has been really said about it. Just a period of wait.
Have you heard? Because we called Bay Mills. I didn't. One of the other staff members at our station did. And the person we were supposed to talk to, of course, was out of the office. But have you heard from Bay Mills? Do we know if they're planning to turn the lights back on this morning or next Monday? Or
well, according to my reporter who made a call to them, I believe yesterday, they were waiting. They were waiting still on the Indian Affairs ruling. It doesn't sound like they're really gearing up to open it tomorrow. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. But
well, they've surprised a lot of people before too, a couple times over. Man, that'll be an interesting one to follow. Let's talk about something else going on in Petoskey. You've got a couple of issues you were telling me about, open meetings violations or concerns about violations of the Open Meetings Act. One of them at one of the schools.
Yes, a group of parents and a former teacher at Northwest Academy in Charlevoix has brought a lawsuit against Northwest Academy, which is a charter school, very small charter school in the city of Charlevoix, for violations of the Open Meeting Act. And all of this revolves around the firing of this teacher she had apparently, there was a student that in the hallway, she gave a hug and a kiss on the cheek to. Just as she says it wasn't a sexual connotation to it. The school board says there was. But, she was terminated from her position. And she started filing lots of Free Information Act requests for these emails and that from the school board members. Well, by the way, there was a protest at the school by the students, and there's a lot of parents who are up in arms about it. So it's a big controversy in itself. But anyhow, in filing these Free Information Acts, she started getting these emails back, which indicated that the school board members were purposely trying to get around the Open Meetings Act law. There was words such as they needed to do damage control, and they were just trying to decide, we can only meet with 2 people, or who's going to meet with them, and they're having all these discussions back and forth over email, which in itself is a violation of the Open Meetings Act. Is whenever you're sending emails over a computer to other members of a public body, you're in a sense having a meeting. And for some reason, there's a lot of public officials that don't really seem to realize that you really shouldn't be having those discussions over email. That has to be in public. And it appears, based on these emails, that not only were they doing this, but they were blatantly doing this. So that's going to be really interesting when it goes to court and see what the judge has to say about it.
The first thing that jumped out at me is, and I don't know this story obviously, but the line of defense, so to speak, could be, we were talking about having 2 or 3 instead of the whole board, so we wouldn't violate open meetings. This is a line of a defensible argument.
It's a pretty cheesy line of defense, and it really shows that the mentality of that board, if they're trying to decide how they're going to subvert the law. But it's still questionable. It's still a possible violation of the law when you're even having that discussion with all the members of this public body over email, because you are still, in a sense, then you're having a meeting,
right? Because
you're seeking input from those other members, and you're doing deliberations by email at the time. So even though that they were saying, well, we can, if we do this and meet in public, we can have this.
That itself should have been an open discussion.
Exactly, that should have been an open discussion. In addition to that, they were having closed meetings with the entire board regarding her termination, the teacher's termination, and she allegedly wanted the meeting in public, and they apparently wouldn't let her. And I tell you, the way the law is written, if there's a personnel issue and the person in question with the personnel issue wants it to be in public, they have the decision whether or not it's going to be in public or private. The person, say you're a teacher, you're being possible termination before the board. You can decide whether or not you want that in public. And if you don't want it in public, the way the law is written, you don't have to have it in public. But you're the one that makes the decision, not the board.
Not the board.
So if she had said, I want this in public, and the board went ahead and said, no, we're going to do this in closed session. You can't do that. It has to be public.
The whole goal of the Open Meetings Act, is for protection. Protect the public so they know what's going on. Obviously helps us in the media know what's going on. I hate to say this to you as a fellow journalist because I cringe at the thought of your reaction, but part of me, very small part, thinks at some times in life, these are the kinds of things that almost go too far. Like you can't even send an email to the rest of your board and say you want to go have coffee tomorrow because you're talking about violating the Open Meetings Act. You can't talk about coffee unless you sit down in a public forum. So just give me your take on it.
The way the law
it's very rigid.
Yeah, the way the law is written, you could ask your fellow board members, can we have coffee? Because what you're doing is you're saying, should we have a meeting? You know, you're debating whether or not you're having, well, you're going to, not debating, you're saying, you're asking whether or not you should have a meeting. You're kind of discussing agenda, what items should be on an agenda. The problem comes is if you start actually deliberating issues that you should be discussing in an open meeting. Right. So I could call you up as a member of a school board or a city council, or even send you an email saying, can we have coffee together? Or can we schedule a special school board or city council meeting next week? I'd like to talk about this special issue. Yep. You can do that.
But you can't. But you also can't start talking about, hey, this is what we should do about
exactly. That's
issue X, Y, Z. Yep.
That is the line that you would cross on.
Yeah, it does seem. I mean, for some people, I think very vague. I think part of the problem is that everyone on the school board is a human being, and not just in that case, everywhere. You've got doctors and bankers, and yes, you've got lawyers, you've got pharmacists. I mean, it runs the gamut. And so when you come onto a school board, I think for a lot of people, it's just ignorance. They don't know. Mm-hmm. They don't know that they're doing anything wrong.
Yes, that's exactly, you're exactly right. And we recognize that at the News Review, and I know a lot of journalists will recognize that. And a lot of times we'll try and educate the public officials, say, hey, you shouldn't do that. This is what the law says, you shouldn't do that. Give me your hand so I can slap it. But we're not going to make a huge deal about it. The difference in this case, though, is they apparently, according to these emails, they understood what they were doing. If these emails are correct and this lawsuit is actually correct, they knew what they were doing. They knew that they were trying to subvert the law. That's where the difference is at, and that's what escalates it to a higher level. Now take, for example, that issue, and then another issue we've got in Petoskey with the Downtown Management Board, okay? Yep. We FOIA'd for a bunch of, FOIA's Freedom of Information Act, by the way. We FOIA'd for a bunch of emails that they had sent to each other regarding their discussions after a meeting that they had with a merchants group that came before the board and made several requests, one of them for being term limits on the board, one for more parking, so on and so forth. About a meeting later, we noticed that suddenly there was this nicely written document of response to these merchants' demands, and this nicely written document was presented without discussion, really, and just entered into the record. So we started thinking, well, how did they come up with that document? So we started emailing, we started FOIAing for their emails, because we had a feeling that they were discussing this over email. And that's exactly what they were doing. As they were discussing, they were deliberating these demands that were being made by this merchant group, the Downtown Management Board, which is like a DDA, a Downtown Development Authority. They were discussing how should they respond to this merchant group's email, okay? Now, there is some question, did they go far enough, cross the line to violate the Open Meetings Act? In my opinion, they may have, okay? But I'm not going to come out and say, you absolutely violate. They may have violated the Open Meetings Act. They at least violated the spirit of the law by having that discussion by email rather than in public, so that the public could understand where they were coming from with these responses back to this merchant group. But the difference there in the school board is that there didn't seem to be any sign that they really understood that this could be a possible violation by having this discussion over email. They really thought, when we talked to them afterwards, they really thought that they were meeting the letter of the law. It wasn't a violation of the Open Meetings Act, even though I feel as though it was a violation of the spirit of the Open Meetings Act, but they really didn't understand it. So there's your difference between the two of them. One group, it appears through their emails that they really understood it and they knew what they were up to. They knew what they were doing, according to this lawsuit that was filed, according to emails that I've seen. Whereas on the other hand, you get this downtown management board, downtown development authority, which was doing something similar, not quite to that level of trying to decide, well, we should have certain meetings with certain people so we can, not violate. But they were talking over email about issues that were coming before the board, but they really didn't seem to understand that they were in violation. Now, there were a few members of that DDA, or the downtown management board, which probably should have understood, such as the director of the downtown management board and the city manager who were involved in those discussions.
Yep.
They should have known better and stopped the discussion, but they didn't. But do you see where that makes a bit of a difference?
Yeah. The thing that popped into my mind, though, was just like with the parking ticket I got the other week, ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Exactly, yes.
So that may play into it too.
But just like if you have an ignorance of the law, and you say you're driving through a community and you get pulled over because you're supposed to have orange tail lights or something like that, and you didn't know that was a law in this community. I'm using complete hyperbole here, but a lot of times, if it's a good police officer, he'll say to you, "Look, this is what the law is here. I'm going to give you a warning. Next time, have it fixed here." And I don't want to say we're police officers, but that's the kind of the way that I look at it as our job in the media, is when you come across these certain circumstances with these public boards, many of whom are, they're volunteers. Yeah. They're regular Joes from the community, just kind of educating them on what the law is before, don't do the first step of bringing a hammer down on them right away. Right. The law is kind of confusing, and it does need a little bit of education on it. We're also at the News Review. We're actually going to be bringing an attorney, a Michigan Press Association attorney, who's an expert in Open Meetings Act law and Freedom of Information law up to Northern Michigan this fall. I'll let everybody know on an exact date, to give a presentation on the laws and try and get, we're going to invite all the public officials in that to try and provide some education on it.
Oh, that's a great idea. I think we need more of that all over the place. Let's talk about the shift of the seasons as we go from winter to summer and some points in between. A little bit of spring action, and we finally got through what seemed like an eternity for the shipping season, just backing up in the straits. For example, the Sulaks, things are finally moving forward, but that was a long process, getting everything to get unplugged, wasn't it?
Oh, yes. I just remember reports just a few weeks ago of ships having problems getting through Lake Superior because of ice. On Memorial Day, where there were some famous photos going across the internet of some kayakers out at Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, and there's these huge icebergs floating around by them. Memorial Day, and Lake Superior. But
I saw one with a couple of ladies, one in a swimsuit sitting on a big ice floe in Lake Superior on Memorial Day. So
it seems as though in Lake Michigan we don't have any ice. But it does seem to be finally open. I've noticed that the marinas in both Charlevoix and Petoskey are starting to get boats in, which is a good thing. Feels a little later than usual, but hopefully it picks up.
You mentioned the Charlevoix Marina. That was a story from last week, but there's talk about expanding that, which met some resistance at a meeting last week.
Yeah, they want to explore their options a bit more on this. The marina was expanded approximately 10 years ago. It went through a big renovation, and at the time, I was actually it was more than 10 years ago actually, because I was actually the editor of the Charlevoix Courier, and
oh, were you? Okay.
And they wanted to do a much bigger marina plan than what they have currently in Charlevoix. But they had a compromise, and it created the plan that they've got now. And they basically, I remember this too, that they made a promise to various community groups, environmental groups, and concerned citizen groups. This is the size of the marina that we've made, and we're not gonna really expand it much further because of your concerns, because of the compromise that we made. We're gonna create this big. So fast forward to now, we want to make it bigger now. So a lot of people are saying, wait a minute, you said 10 or so years ago that you weren't going to do this, that we're done with this. And it is quite a large expansion on it. But I do see where they're coming from, and that the city is seeing a lot larger yachts coming in Charlevoix. It's a horrible problem to have, apparently. No, they're seeing bigger yachts coming in and more boats coming in, so they need more room. I mean, those folks down at the Charlevoix Marina are really good at getting those boats in there, and I mean they're stacking them up in there, and they're pretty tight. So you can see where they do need a little more room. But then again, is Round Lake where the marina is located? Is it built out already? Is this too much of a development? And they did say those years back that this is as big as they were going to go because this was a compromise that they made with the community.
I imagine though you've got a vastly different city council than you did 10, 12 years ago. I mean, the different people making the decisions. Devil's advocate. You can't hold me to what somebody said 10 years ago. This is a new era.
I'm trying to think of the city council, who was on the city council then, and I think there may be at least 2 people from then. They're still on the council, or who have were off the council and they've come back. But yeah, I mean, you could say that. You could say the devil's advocate that this is a different city council, and also you could say this is a different time. 10 years later, different needs.
Things have changed.
Things have changed. Yeah.
Sure.
But then again, when you make promises, especially to community members who don't forget.
Yeah.
And they'll bring it back to you. They'll bring it up.
The other thing that comes with the change of the season is the road construction. You guys have a lot of projects going on up north, and what do you see as the impact as we get closer and closer to summer? And now, I guess now that Memorial Day is here, we are in the summer season.
Well, on one hand, it's good to see these road projects to improve our roads that so desperately need the roads. On the other hand, being somebody who gets stuck in the in the traffic jams. But we do have some big ones in Petoskey. The biggest one is they're renovating the bridge over the Bear River, and that's caused some backups near downtown Petoskey because it's the bridge down to one lane. Should be real nice when they get it done. The locals have they know all the back roads to take, so it hasn't been too much of a problem.
Just follow the train and you'll find your way out.
I think it's going to it'll have an impact, of course, in the traffic. It'll cause more traffic jam, especially as we go further into the summer. Because summer really has just started. The faucet hasn't been turned on completely. But once all the tourists do come in, it could create some significant backups. But this is what we live with. We need to do this in order to fix the roads.
MDOT's got one right along the highway coming up too, don't they? Or did they start that already?
Oh God, they have so many.
I was trying to just remember the list, and that one jumped out of me in my brain. But
yeah, they've got a lot. They've got a lot. I can't think of exactly which one you're talking about.
Have there been, I guess, finally any developments with Petoskey Point? We've got the Grand Rapids owner now who is looking into options, but it's already. I mean, the purchase is done.
Yeah, the purchase is
so
done.
that's kind of, a nice thing to see that, even though we don't know still what's happening, it's officially changed hands.
Well, he's come up with a name for it. It's not called Petoskey Point anymore. I think it's Sunset Point. I may be wrong there. Sunset something.
It's going to take a long time to stop calling it Petoskey Point.
Yeah.
Or the hole in the ground, but.
Other than that, there hasn't been much development that I know of. I know he's putting together his team, coming up with a plan for it. I'm sure we'll hear something soon. Within, I would say, at least the next month. I'm sure we'll hear something.
Yeah.
It's just my gut feeling as a newsman.
Anything else that you know of that's in the paper coming up today that you want to talk about, or do you head back to Petoskey now and sit down with the staff and kind of figure out the layout for the next issue?
Well, we're always looking to, always keeping an eye on the weather, because that's going to really be important for our tourism season this summer. If we have a cold summer, that could hurt us as a region. But it's beautiful out right now. It's sunny. We're keeping an eye on budgets right now. Especially, you're going to have your school budgets coming up here soon. We're taking a look at the headlands up in Emmett County, which is an interesting issue up there. They're wanting to build an observatory and several buildings and a storage area for a big boat, and they're doing it with millions of dollars through a bond that they don't have to bring before the voters. And we're fascinated by this because in the same community, you've got the school district, which really needs the cash, and they're cash strapped. Whereas you have the county who's going, let's build it. We'll spend $7 million on an observatory, and we're saying, do you have like a feasibility study to show us that we should build this? No, we just think it should be done. So it's interesting to us that you've got one government body saying, we're going to go ahead and spend this money. The other government body is saying, the school board, the school's saying, we need money. We're desperate. So we're keeping an eye on that. We've also got a big issue in Emmett County regarding ambulance services, funding for ambulance services, whether I should bring a bond proposal up before voters. So we're keeping an eye on that. And just a lot of the general summertime stuff, with lots of festivals coming up. So we're going to be all over the place. One of our big things that we do each week is we decide, all right, who's covering what festival, and who's got this weekend, and who's got next weekend, and who's got this evening and tomorrow evening, and it's just a matter of trying to send your troops out to the right places. At the same time, trying to get some of those meteor news stories, because you have to cover the festivals, because that's the flavor of the community, and you really have to document it.
Well, it's everybody knows what's going on, but everybody wants to read about it anyway.
Exactly. And you get some neat pictures out of them, and some good stories, some real good feature stories out of them. But you still have got those meteor news stories that you have to get too. So you're always doing a balancing act of manpower. Yep.
Well, you guys do it well. Jeremy, thanks for coming in. Jeremy McBain from the Petoskey News Review. Good to have you.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks for watching The Briefing Room. I'm Bill Froehlich, and we will see you again next time right here.